Most people think demons just wait for you to sin. They don't. They have recruiters, they have systems, they have quotas. And according to exorcists who have spent decades fighting them, these entities are working harder than ever because they know time is running out. What I'm about to show you is not theory. It's documented evidence from the front lines of the spiritual war. In the last 5 years, the Catholic Church has seen a 300% increase in exorcism requests. That's not an exaggeration. It's direct data from the Vatican. But here's what most people don't know. During these exorcisms, when demons are forced to speak, they reveal things. Strategies, methods, recruitment tactics. And the pattern is always the same. They're no longer attacking people at random. They're hunting. They're strategic. They're organized. And according to veteran exorcists, this acceleration means something. Let's break down exactly how this recruitment process works, the specific stages demons use to claim souls, and why exorcists believe we're seeing this drastic increase. Right now, everything you're about to hear comes directly from documented exorcism cases, official church records, and interviews with priests who regularly perform these rituals. Here's the problem that keeps exorcists up at night. For most of human history, demonic activity followed predictable patterns. People dabbled in occult practices, opened doors through grave sins, and demonic oppression or possession followed. But something changed in the last 2 decades. The attacks became more sophisticated, more targeted, more systematic. Father Gary Thomas, one of the most experienced exorcists in the United States, has performed over 100 exorcisms. He says the entities he encounters now are different from those 20 years ago. They're more aggressive, more organized, work in teams, and openly talk about recruitment numbers as if running a business. During an exorcism in 2019, a demon was forced to reveal its assignment. It wasn't just tormenting this person, it had a list. Multiple specific vulnerabilities for each person, attack times, backup plans. If the main approach failed, this wasn't random evil. It was coordinated spiritual warfare with clear objectives and measurable outcomes. Father Vincent Lampert, the official exorcist of the Archdiocese of Indianapolis, documented a case where a demon bragged about its promotion. It had successfully recruited 17 souls in a 2-year period, and was being granted authority over more powerful attacks. Think about it. Demons have hierarchies. They have performance reviews. They're promoted based on how many people they drag down. The challenge exorcists face today is that these recruitment methods have evolved alongside human society. Demons no longer need to appear in dramatic supernatural manifestations. They've learned to hide within technology, relationships, mental health struggles, and cultural trends. They've become invisible while becoming more effective than ever, and according to multiple exorcists, this isn't happening by accident. This is a coordinated push, a final recruitment campaign before something ends. Let's break down the actual recruitment process demons use. This information comes from exorcism transcripts, interviews with experienced exorcists, and patterns identified in hundreds of documented cases. The process has 7 distinct stages, and understanding these stages is crucial because each one builds on the previous. Stage 1 is identification. Demons don't waste time on people who are spiritually fortified. They look for vulnerability. Father Francesco Bamonte, president of the International Association of Exorcists, explains that demons can sense spiritual weakness like sharks sense blood in the water. They look for things like unresolved trauma, deep-seated anger or resentment, patterns of addiction, isolation, obsession with control or power, heavy use of pornography, fascination with darkness or occult imagery, even if it seems harmless, pride that rejects correction, despair that rejects hope. These aren't random traits, they're entry points. During exorcisms, demons frequently mention how they selected their victims. A demon told Father Lampert that it watched a teenage girl for 3 months before making its first move. It studied her social media, noticed she posted about feeling lonely. It saw she made jokes that weren't really jokes. It identified the exact emotional wound it could exploit. Then it waited for the right moment. Stage 2 is the approach. This is where demons begin their initial contact, but it never seems demonic at first. This is the most deceptive part of the whole process. The approach always seems to offer something the person desperately desires. For someone lonely, it might be a new group of friends that gradually introduces darker interests. For someone angry, it might be an ideology that justifies their anger and gives them enemies to hate. For someone insecure, it might be power through occult practices disguised as self-improvement. For someone suffering, it might be substances that numb the pain but create dependency. Father José Antonio Fortea, a Spanish exorcist who has written extensively on demonic activity, documented a case involving a college student who felt powerless. In his life, he stumbled upon online forums about chaos magic. The practices seemed harmless, just visualization exercises and intention setting. In 6 months, he was involved in blood rituals and experienced supernatural manifestations in his apartment. The demon later admitted during the exorcism that it had algorithmically placed that content in front of him. It knew his psychology. It knew he would be curious. It knew he wouldn't see the danger until he was already hooked. The approach stage always offers a counterfeit version of something good. Counterfeit love through sexual addiction. Counterfeit power through hidden manipulation. Counterfeit peace through substance abuse. Counterfeit identity through ideological possession. Counterfeit transcendence through New Age practices that secretly invoke demonic entities. The person doesn't know they're being recruited. They think they're solving a problem or filling a need. Stage 3 is isolation. Once initial contact is established, demons systematically work to cut off protective influences. This happens so gradually that most people don't realize it until it's already done. Father Gabriel Amorth, who performed over 60,000 exorcisms before his death in 2016, said this is the stage where families start to notice something is wrong, but can't identify what has changed. Isolation follows patterns. The person begins to distance themselves from family members who practice faith. They stop going to church or praying but rationalize it as simply not feeling connected anymore. They cut off friends who might question their new behaviors or beliefs. They stop doing activities that used to bring them healthy joy. They sleep less and spend more time online, especially during the late hours of the night when they are psychologically vulnerable. Their media consumption becomes darker. Music, movies, games, all gradually tend toward themes of nihilism, violence, or occult imagery. An exorcism case from Portugal involved a woman who described this isolation process from the inside. She said she felt everyone in her life was becoming annoying or critical. Her mother's concern felt like reprimand, her friend's faith felt like weakness, her boyfriend's love felt like control. She preferred to be alone because that's when she felt most herself, except she wasn't alone. She was being systematically separated from everyone who could help her, and the thoughts telling her this was healthy independence weren't coming from her own mind. Stage 4 is oppression. This is where demonic activity becomes more intense, but still operates mainly through circumstances that seem natural. The person experiences what feels like a streak of bad luck or worsening mental health. Father Thomas describes oppression as demons turning up the pressure without rebelling, spikes of anxiety for no apparent reason, depression that deepens despite medication or therapy, intrusive thoughts that become more frequent and disturbing, sleep problems that intensify, often with nightmares that feel different from normal dreams, more vivid, more malevolent, more like memories of things that haven't happened yet. Physical symptoms begin to appear. Unexplained headaches, digestive issues, chronic fatigue, muscle tension. Some people develop skin problems or hair loss. Medical tests come back normal, but the symptoms persist and worsen. Relationships deteriorate faster. Small conflicts escalate into big fights. The person becomes more irritable, more reactive, more defensive. They may have accidents or near accidents. Things break around them. Electronics fail, they lose important items. But here's the key detail that exorcists emphasize. All of this still has plausible, natural explanations. The person can tell themselves they're just stressed or unlucky or mentally ill. They're not thinking about demons, they're thinking about surviving. And that's exactly the point. The demons want them to focus on the suffering, not the spiritual source of that suffering. Father Chad Ripperger, an American exorcist, explains that oppression softens the target, weakens discernment, creates despair, and desperate people make bad decisions, which leads to Stage 5. Stage 5 is the invitation. This is the critical turning point. Everything up to now has been external pressure and circumstantial manipulation. But demons can't possess someone without some form of consent. They need an invitation. That invitation doesn't have to be explicit. The person doesn't have to say, "I invite demons into my life," but they do have to make a decision that opens the door. And by Stage 5, they're usually suffering enough to be willing to try anything. The invitation often comes through occult practices, using a Ouija board, even as a joke, attending a séance, consulting psychics or mediums, practicing witchcraft or casting spells, devoting themselves to a pagan deity without understanding what entity might actually respond, getting occult tattoos or wearing occult symbols, engaging in sexual rituals or blood magic. These are obvious invitations and demons accept them immediately. But there are also less obvious invitations. Father Fortea documented cases where the invitation came through extreme vices. A man so consumed by anger that he internally wished he could make people suffer as he did. A woman so deep in addiction that she consciously chose the substance over God and family. A teenager so obsessed with control, he tried to manipulate reality through concentrated hatred. These internal decisions, when they reach a certain intensity and become a pattern of the will, constitute an invitation. The person is essentially choosing this darkness. Even if you don't understand the spiritual implications, some invitations are direct. One case involved a young man who was suicidal. In his desperation, he spoke out loud to his empty room. He said that if someone or something could take away his pain, he would give them whatever they wanted. 3 days later, the oppression suddenly lifted. He felt better than he had in years. He had energy, confidence, a sense of power. He didn't connect it to his statement. He thought he had simply come out of his depression. 6 months later, he was in full demonic possession. And during the exorcism, the demon played back a recording of that exact statement. It had a contract and wasn't going to leave without a fight. Stage 6 is the room. Once the invitation is given, demons move from external oppression to internal presence. This is possession, but it exists on a spectrum. Some possessions are partial. The demon has influence but not total control. The person still has their own thoughts and will, but shares space with something else. They may hear voices that aren't their own thoughts. They may have memory gaps. They may do things they don't fully remember deciding to do. They may feel like passengers in their own body. At certain times, full possession is different. The person's consciousness is completely suppressed and the demon has total control. This is what you see in exorcism videos. Supernatural strength, speaking in languages they never learned, knowledge of hidden information, violent reactions to blessed objects or sacred names, voices that don't match their natural voice, body contortions that shouldn't be physically possible, levitation, in some extreme cases. Father Amorth documented several cases where possessed individuals lifted furniture that should have required several strong men to move. But here's what most people don't understand. Even in full possession, the person made choices that led to it. Demons can't just snatch souls. The recruitment process required the person to keep choosing. Darkness over light, isolation over community, lies over truth, self over God. By the time they are possessed, they have made a series of decisions that add up to a final surrender. And demons are very good at making each individual decision seem small or justified. While hiding the cumulative trajectory, Stage 7 is multiplication. This is the stage that terrifies exorcists the most because it's here that the recruited become recruiters. Possessed individuals actively work to drag others down. Sometimes they are aware of it. Sometimes they are manipulated without full awareness. But the pattern is always the same. They target people they used to know, family, friends, romantic partners. They introduce them to the same destructive behaviors and beliefs that led to their own possession. They mock faith and virtue while glorifying vice and darkness. They become agents of corruption, dragging vulnerable people through the same 7 stages. Father Ripperger explains that this is why demonic activity spreads exponentially. One possessed person can influence dozens of others. Some of those others will be oppressed or possessed and influence dozens more. It works like a demonic pyramid scheme, with each level recruiting the next lower level. And, according to multiple exorcists, this multiplication effect has drastically accelerated. In the internet age, a possessed person with a large social media following can influence millions. They can normalize darkness. They can make evil seem attractive, rebellious, or enlightened. They can trigger vulnerable people who are already in stage 1 or 2, pushing them faster through the process. Now, let's talk about why exorcists believe this recruitment effort has intensified. Father Lampert says that every exorcism he performs now includes some reference from the demon about time running out. They aren't specific about what that means, but the urgency is constant. In cases from different countries involving different exorcists, the demons talk about final numbers, meeting quotas before a deadline, making each recruitment count because opportunities are closing. Some exorcists interpret this through an eschatological lens. They believe we are in the end times, and the demons know the window to claim souls is shrinking. Others are more cautious with that interpretation, but acknowledge that demonic activity clearly follows patterns suggesting coordination toward a specific goal. Father Beaumonte points out that demons exist in a different relationship with time than we do. They can perceive future events that we cannot yet see. Their sense of urgency could be based on knowledge of upcoming spiritual events that will limit their operational freedom. What is not debatable are the data. Requests for exorcisms are skyrocketing. Possessions are becoming more violent and more resistant to the ritual. Demons openly discuss recruitment strategies during exorcisms, something that was extremely rare 30 years ago. The International Association of Exorcists has expanded training programs because the demand for qualified exorcists far exceeds the supply. In 2018, the Vatican organized a week-long exorcism training course and had to turn away applicants because too many priests wanted to learn. There's also the cultural dimension. Western society has become simultaneously more skeptical of spiritual reality and at the same time more open to occult practices. That's not a contradiction. From a demonic perspective, it's ideal. People don't believe in demons, so they don't protect themselves against them. But they do believe in manifestation, energy work, and spirit contact, so they open doors without recognizing the danger. You have teenagers playing with Ouija boards they bought in stores. You have adults consulting tarot readers and attending new moon rituals. You have influencers teaching millions of followers how to cast spells. You have mainstream celebrities openly practicing witchcraft and talking about their demonic spirits as if they were benign. The secularization of society removed the cultural immune system against demonic activity. Previous generations grew up with at least a basic spiritual literacy. They knew some practices were dangerous. They knew certain doors should not be opened. But several generations have now been raised without spiritual education. They don't recognize the warning signs. No, they don't know the difference between a psychological struggle and a spiritual attack. They interpret oppression as mental illness and treat it only medically, which can help with symptoms but doesn't address the spiritual root. This creates a population that is uniquely vulnerable to recruitment. Father Thomas shared a case that illustrates this perfectly. A woman in her 30s came to him after years of treatment for resistant depression and anxiety. She had tried all medications and therapeutic approaches. Nothing worked. During their conversation, he asked about her spiritual practices. She mentioned she did daily tarot readings and had a spirit guide she channeled for advice. She had been doing it for 8 years. She saw no connection between these practices and her mental health issues. For her, spiritual things helped her deal with mental health issues. She didn't understand that she had invited something 8 years ago and it had been oppressing her since then, making her increasingly dependent on it while worsening her life. After giving up those practices and going through deliverance prayers, her symptoms improved more in 2 weeks than they had in 8 years of treatment. The demon had been posing as a helpful spirit guide while systematically destroying her mental health so she would continue to depend on it. That's the level of deception we're dealing with. These entities are ancient. They are intelligent. They understand human psychology better than we understand ourselves, and they have had thousands of years to perfect their recruitment tactics. Let's talk about the specific vulnerabilities that demons exploit most effectively in modern recruitment. Exorcists have identified several areas where they concentrate their efforts. The first is sexuality. The sexual revolution disconnected sex from permanence, commitment, and procreation. It became about pleasure and self-expression. Demons absolutely exploit this. Pornography addiction creates neural pathways that demons can hijack. It trains people to associate arousal with images rather than relationships. It escalates into darkness. Over time, someone starts with normal content and gradually needs more extreme material to get the same response. That escalation is often demonically influenced. Father Reiperger has documented cases where pornography addiction opened the door to demonic oppression that then led the person to increasingly disturbing content. The hookup culture creates soul ties with multiple partners. From a spiritual perspective, sexual union creates a bond whether we acknowledge it or not. When you sleep with someone, you connect spiritually with that person. You also connect with everyone that person has slept with and everyone those people have slept with. If any of those people are oppressed or possessed, that spiritual contamination can transfer. Exorcists regularly see people who became oppressed after sexual encounters with someone who was demonically influenced. They thought it was just physical, but the spiritual realm doesn't recognize that distinction. Gender ideology is another area of concentrated attack. Father Reiperger has publicly stated that the explosion of gender confusion is demonically driven. Demons want to confuse people about their fundamental identity. If they can convince someone that they don't even know what they are. On the most basic level, they have created deep psychological and spiritual instability. That instability facilitates further recruitment. This doesn't mean that all people experiencing gender dysphoria are possessed. But exorcists are seeing patterns where demonic oppression creates or intensifies that confusion. And then the person is guided towards permanent body modifications that create lasting damage and regret. Social media is a weapon that demons use extensively. Algorithms are designed to maximize engagement, which means they show content that triggers strong emotions. Anger, envy, lust, fear. These are exactly the emotions that demons want to cultivate because they make people more vulnerable to influence. Social media also creates artificial social comparison that breeds discontent. Everyone sees the curated highlights of others' lives and feels inadequate in comparison. That inadequacy can turn into resentment or despair. Platforms also allow for isolation disguised as connection. People spend hours online and call it social interaction, but they're really alone in a room staring at a screen. That's ideal for demonic activity. Exorcists have documented multiple cases where possessions began with online content. Someone watches occult-themed videos. The algorithm recommends more. They join communities, learn practices, try rituals they found in the comment sections. Before they know it, they're in stage 3 or 4 of recruitment. And it all started with a YouTube recommendation. Father Lampert encountered a case where a teenager became possessed after participating in an online forum claiming to teach astral projection. What they actually learned was how to invite demons in during an intentionally induced state of vulnerability. The forum moderators, at least some of them, some were possessed and actively recruiting. Drugs are another obvious vector, not just the act of using them, but the specific states of consciousness that certain substances produce. Psychedelics, in particular, create experiences that people interpret as spiritual awakening or mystical insight. But from the exorcist's perspective, these substances often open doors to the demonic realm. They lower natural spiritual defenses. They make people receptive to entities and experiences they would normally be protected from. DMT users talk about encountering entities that communicate with them. Those are not hallucinations. They are real spiritual beings, and they are not benign. Father Fortea has documented cases where ayahuasca ceremonies or mushroom trips led directly to demonic oppression because the person encountered something during the experience and invited it without understanding what they were doing. Music is a weapon. This sounds paranoid until you look at the documentation. Certain frequencies and rhythms can induce trance states. Lyrics can function as incantations, whether the listener realizes it or not. Artists who are demonically influenced or possessed create music that carries spiritual contamination. People listen to it for hours, often in vulnerable states like falling asleep or working out. They are absorbing not just sound but spiritual influence. Multiple exorcists have noted that possessed individuals often have extensive exposure to music with explicitly demonic themes or music created by artists who openly practice occultism. Entertainment in general serves for recruitment. Movies and series that glorify darkness make it seem appealing. They present demons as cool or misunderstood. They show witchcraft as empowering. They depict evil as more interesting than good. This is conditioning. It normalizes what should be recognized as dangerous. It makes people curious about things they should avoid. Father Amorth repeatedly warned about the Harry Potter series for this very reason. It presents witchcraft as fun and heroic. Children read those books and want to learn real magic. They don't understand that real occult practices have real spiritual consequences. Trauma is ruthlessly exploited. Someone experiences abuse, betrayal, or loss. They are hurt, angry, and looking for someone to blame. Demons feed that anger. They whisper that God allowed this to happen so God doesn't love them or doesn't exist. They foster bitterness and resentment. They turn the person's pain into a weapon against their own soul. Exorcists see this constantly. People who experience terrible things and made vows in their pain. I will never forgive them. I will never trust anyone again. I will never let myself be weak again. Those vows become entry points. The person thinks they are protecting themselves, but they are actually imprisoning themselves in emotions that demons can manipulate. Mental illness is both a vulnerability and a cover. Some mental illnesses are purely biological and psychological, but some are demonically caused or intensified. The challenge is that they can look identical from the outside. That's why exorcists work with mental health professionals.
But demons are.
If someone is experiencing demonic oppression but believes it's just depression or anxiety, they will never address the spiritual component. They will treat the symptoms without touching the cause. And the medical establishment is mostly materialistic. They don't even have categories for spiritual attack. So, people suffer for years in treatments that can't help them because the real problem isn't being addressed. Father Ripperger shared a case of a man diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. He had multiple distinct personalities emerging. Therapy wasn't helping. During a consultation, Father Ripperger recognized signs of possession. The man underwent an exorcism, and several demons were expelled. After the deliverance, the alternate personalities completely disappeared. What psychiatry labeled as DID were actually multiple demons inhabiting a person. Now, that doesn't mean all DID is demonic, but it does mean that some cases are. And if we're not willing to consider that possibility, people won't get the help they really need. Here comes the moment when all this comes together into something you need to understand. During an exorcism in Rome in 2021, Father Bamonte was facing a particularly powerful demon that had possessed a young woman for more than 3 years. The exorcism had been going on for hours. The demon was being forced through the ritual to reveal information and said something that Father Bamonte later described as the most chilling statement he had heard in decades of exorcism ministry. The demon said, "We don't care about those who reject God. Obviously, we already have them. We don't even care much about those who are lukewarm. They're easy when we need them. The ones we focus on now are those who think they're safe, those who pray sometimes and think that's enough. Those who go to church but live like the world. Those who believe in God but don't actually follow Him. Those are our targets now because they think they're protected, but they're not. And when we get them, they don't even realize it's happening until it's too late. Their families keep thinking they're just going through a phase or struggling with their mental health. By the time someone realizes it's spiritual, we've already won. This is the key moment. The recruitment campaign is not primarily focused on obvious sinners or those who openly reject God. It focuses on committed believers, people who have one foot in faith and one foot in the world, people who identify as Christians but consume the same media as everyone else, who engage in the same sexual ethics as the culture, who are as materialistic and self-centered as non-believers, who pray when they're scared but ignore God when they're comfortable. These people think they're safe because they believe. But belief without obedience is not protection. It's vulnerability disguised as security. James chapter 2 verse 19 says even the demons believe and tremble. Belief is not enough. The demons know God exists. They know Jesus is Lord. That knowledge doesn't save them because they are in rebellion. And humans who believe but live in functional rebellion are in the same position. They don't have the protection they think they have. They've left doors open while assuming their occasional prayers cover them, and demons are coming through those doors. That's why recruitment is accelerating. There's a whole generation of people who grew up with some Christian background but without real discipleship. They have enough of Jesus to feel safe and enough of the world to be compromised. They don't read the scriptures, don't have a prayer life, don't communicate with other believers, don't confess their sins, nor pursue holiness, but they believe so they think they're fine. And demons are greatly exploiting that demographic because they are spiritually illiterate, culturally compromised, and overly confident in their position. Exorcists are sounding the alarm. This is not fear-mongering, it's documentation from the front lines. Spiritual warfare is intensifying. Recruitment tactics are more sophisticated than ever. And the main targets are people who think they aren't targets. If that's you, if you're someone who believes in God but hasn't really surrendered your life to God, you need to understand you're in the most dangerous category right now. You have no excuse of ignorance, but you also have no power of obedience. You know enough to be responsible, but not enough to be protected. Let's tie this together. Demons recruit souls through a 7-step process: identification, approach, isolation, oppression, invitation, habitation, and multiplication. This is not random, it's systematic. They seek vulnerability, offer counterfeits, cut off protection, apply pressure, secure consent, establish presence, and use the captured to capture others. The process exploits modern culture in every sexual brokenness, digital isolation, hidden curiosity, substance use, trauma, mental health struggles, compromised faith. The recruitment campaign has drastically intensified in recent years. All indicators show an acceleration: more requests for exorcism, more violent possessions, more open discussion of demons about quotas and deadlines. Exorcists from different countries and denominations report the same patterns. This is coordinated, this is intentional, this is escalating. The main targets right now are not the obviously lost, they are the functionally compromised. People with backgrounds, crises, but worldly lives. People who believe but don't obey. People who pray occasionally but live independently. People who think their half-hearted faith provides full protection. It doesn't. Those open doors, those compromises, those areas where you've chosen comfort over obedience, those are entry points and demons are systematically exploiting them. Protection is available, but it requires more than belief. It requires an active relationship with God. Daily prayer, regular scripture reading, confession of sins, participation in the Christian community, sacramental life for those in traditions that have it, obedience even when it's costly, holiness as a lifestyle, not just an idea, spiritual disciplines that strengthen your soul against attack. You can't be passively protected in an active war. You have to engage, you have to fight, you have to choose a side and live as if you've chosen it. If you recognize yourself in any of the stages we've discussed, you need to act now, not later. Not when it's more convenient. Now, cut off what opened the door. Renounce any hidden involvement, even if it seemed harmless. Stop consuming media that glorifies darkness and sexual relationships outside of it. Abandon substances. Forgive the people you've held grudges against. Reconnect with the faith community you've been avoiding. Start praying as if your soul depended on it, because it does. Find a priest or pastor who understands spiritual warfare and get help. Don't try to fight alone. You can't. For those who are not in active spiritual danger right now, understand that you know people who are. Family members going through stage 3 isolation. Friends in stage 4 oppression. Colleagues in stage 2 approach. You might be the only person in their life who can recognize what's really happening and help them. Pray for them. Tell them the truth. Don't enable their compromises. Be willing to have difficult conversations. Be willing to warn them, even if it damages the relationship. Their eternity matters more than your comfort. Exorcists tell us time is short. Whether that means years, decades, or generations, they don't know. But the urgency of the demonic realm is real and constant. There's a push happening right now, a final recruitment campaign. And the only question that matters is which side are you on, and if you're truly living as if you've chosen that side. Belief is not enough, intention is not enough. What matters is where you really are and what you're really doing. If this video has challenged you or opened your eyes to something you hadn't seen before, subscribe to the channel. There are more things to come that you'll need to hear.